All right. Here come the numbers. We're actually working this week. That's a good thing. All right, we'll give her a couple seconds for everybody to jump on, and then we'll get started. All right, that's a good crowd for a start off. We'll jump right out with the numbers like we normally do. We had two new cases in town today. We have been, if you've been following up through last week, we have been averaging about a case a day, just one case a day. So some days zero, about once a week. The last couple of weeks, we've been getting either one or two. Two or three, but generally it's been that low single-digit number. So again, headed clearly in the right direction here. We're sitting at 222 cases. 224. So, we talked about that doubling time, and again, we are well beyond a month of doubling time at this point. So, everything that everybody did, working to stay home, social distancing, wearing their masks, clearly is working here as we're just going to, continue to look like chug along at one a day here. So, that's great news. Whole bunch of executive orders and administrative orders that have been dropped since we spoke last week. So I'll go over them briefly, and then if we have questions about them, we can get those spooled up. See a bunch of people jumping on. Hi, Gail. Hi, Christina. Marie. All right, we got a good crowd tonight. Hi, Angie. So Executive Order 145, which was about Friday last week, opening up elective surgeries, providing some framework for how healthcare facilities have to go about putting extra steps of protection mitigation in there. But those will start up as of May 26th. Executive Order 146, which is a good one for us locally, that brought back charter fishing, watercraft rental. So obviously important time of year for our businesses down on the bayfront. A lot of marinas in town. So whether we're at Shearers, Mariners, Bob's Bay, Tony G's, Mariners, Sun Harbor, a bunch of marinas doing business down on the bayfront here. So anything that's bringing business back into town and giving them the ability to do more business is a good thing. So again, pointed in the right direction there. Along with that, Administrative Order 2020-13 that comes out of state OEM that relaxed the restrictions that were on car dealerships. So sale of cars, sale of boats, sale of motorcycles. They can go back to in-person sales. Obviously have to have extra steps in place, social distancing, masks, separating the cashiers, limiting, test drives with the car, limiting the people in the car with the boat, making sure you can socially distance with the salesperson. But again, stuff pointed in the right direction there, which was great. There was an administrative order that came out today that allows pharmacists now to do COVID testing. So that'll be something that will help move up our testing here. And I should talk about that just briefly when we go back to saying how we're only at one case a day. Think about back when we were getting a dozen cases a day, and we have much less testing that we have now. So we're doing a lot more testing now, and we're getting a lot more negatives than positives locally, which is great. So all good news there. I'm going to jump to, hyper locally. A lot of questions from last week about a couple things that we'll cover. Fireworks was one of the big questions. Are the fireworks still on? A couple of you educated me because you would watch the governor's speech that day or his press conference talking about fireworks. We looked at the executive order. I felt like there was a little wiggle room there where we could have potentially gone that way. We called up to the prosecutor's office, conferred with them, and our direction from them was that holding the fireworks here would violate the spirit of the executive order. So the fireworks are off. We won't be having fireworks this summer. I know that the business administrator and the town attorney are working on getting the town's deposit back on that, since we can't hold them due to the executive order. So again, that's I know something a lot of people look forward to. So That's no on the fireworks. Along with that, we'd normally start the concerts down at the dock this time of year. Unfortunately, the executive orders that still stand, prohibit us from doing that. So no fireworks, no concerts. Questions about the Memorial Day parade, something that I know we look forward to participating in as an agency every year here. Unfortunately, that is canceled as well. On the positive news front, though, I know there was questions about the farmers market, and farmers market is on. That'll start on June 18th, and going to be a new location this year. It's going to be across the street from the firehouse on Birdsall Street, so not too far from where it was in that big field across from the firehouse. So that gives us more space, so easier to social distance, and just a safer way to do it. So farmers markets will be continuing. And more good news, as I know people asked about it, were the drive-in movies at the dock. There are currently 2 drive-in movies scheduled at the dock, one for June 27th, one for July 10th. Don't ask me what they are because I don't know what movies they're showing yet, but I'm sure that info will be out there. And I know that the committee and recreation are working on trying to get more drive-in movie dates on the calendar. So if you're not following the rec department's Facebook page, I would maybe give them a follow because I'm sure they'll be putting out some updates on that, and I'm sure there'll be some nixles out on that as well. So at least good news on the farmers market and on the drive-in movie front. Locally, our compliance here. I know people saw on the news last week. Stewart's root beer down in Tuckerton had gotten cited for having outdoor seating. Outdoor dining going on, or people dining at their seats. We still have had a really great cooperation with the business community here. Have done really a phenomenal job when you ask a bunch of businesses to idle for this long. We haven't had any compliance issues here, and our mask compliance has been really good here as well. So the places that you're required to wear masks, some of those essential businesses, we haven't had any problems. And again, we're going to continue to encourage people to wear masks when they're out, along with or in accordance with the recommendation that's out there from the CDC. I'll point you to, you can go ahead and Google it. There was a new study out of Hong Kong University that just hit in about the last 48 hours that showed that transmission to COVID-19 was reduced by as much as 75%. By wearing a face covering. In this case, they use surgical masks, which are not that thick, right? Nothing like an N95. So reduced it by 75%. So the fresh studies that are out there are showing that the masks make a difference. So we're going to continue to encourage people to follow the guidelines and wear those. But I'd like to put out there, because it is the one call that we continuously get, wearing masks outside. You're at the municipal dock. When you're not in a business that requires it under the essential business executive orders, it's an ask, right? It's a recommendation. It is not a requirement. So we keep getting calls. People call us and say, report that there's somebody at the municipal dock who's not wearing a face covering. It's not a requirement to wear a face covering. It's just a recommendation. So there's nothing there that the police department, can enforce. But again, we're going to encourage people to keep wearing them. You can look right about the same time as that Hong Kong University study. Another panel of international experts looked at the results they're getting from wearing masks, and they said that if we can get universal mask compliance up around 80%. That as far as their model show, now in fairness, we all know how the models have been for the last 4 months, but that flattened the curve better than a strict lockdown. But at 50% compliance, which is what we had seen when we started the mask thing weeks and weeks ago, that doesn't quite get it done. So again, going to keep harping on it because everything that everybody is doing here locally is working. Our numbers are nice and low, and that's great. And I think we can all agree, one of the most important things we can do right now is get the businesses and everything open back up safely, so we can get our neighbors back to work and back to earning a living. Tough time of year for a lot of businesses right now to be idled. So everything that people are doing to wear masks and social distance is helping that, because again, I've got to imagine if the state continues to see the numbers headed down like they are, that they're going to continue opening up more and more like they've been doing. So great job on that, and we certainly appreciate it. On our statistical front here, we talk about it every week. We're at the point now, I looked this morning at May of this year to date versus the same period in May of 2019, and we are just about in the same type of call load space that we were in last year. We had 605 calls for service so far this month. Last year, in the month of May up to this time, we had 604 calls for service. So we're literally just about call for call with last year. We talked about how domestic violence had climbed. We really had a high number of DV calls, in the middle of this lockdown period, the stay-at-home period. Month of May, we've had 14 domestic violence incidents to date this month. And you look at May of 19 to this point, we also had 14. So that's back. I don't want to call that a good number because, we always want to look for no domestic violence calls. But we're at the same number that we were at last year. So we're not seeing an elevation there anymore. And our motor vehicle crashes are still actually down. Again, makes sense. Kids not driving to school, people not driving to work as much. So that number's down about 37% May this year versus May last year. Along those same kind of statistical lines, the question came up, I want to say it was the last couple of weeks, asking about, how's the crime rate in town? What's crime doing? Are we seeing an increase in crime with the stay-at-home, with people being out of work? Our numbers on that front are really, really good, surprisingly good, given what's going on right now out in the world. So we've talked about it before. You look at the last full year of data that the state police published for UCR was 2018. And you look at 2018, Barnegat had the lowest crime rate in Ocean County, lower than, again, any other town in the county. Nice low crime rate, which is great. When we look at year-to-date this year and compare it to year-to-date last year up until this point, I'll just give you a couple of the standout numbers. Our assaults are down 59% this year versus this amount of time last year, the same period last year. Our burglaries are down 60%, 60%. Our thefts are down 22%. And our robberies are down 100% because to this point last year we had 2, and to this point this year we've had 0. So again, cannot thank the officers here enough. Adapting to a very, very new environment to work in, lots of new procedures, lots of new ways of doing things. And at the same time, though, we've been able to continue to work with the community to keep the crime rate not just low, and not just as low as it was when we were the lowest in the county, but as those numbers show, we've driven it even lower. So that's great news, great work between the community and the police department that we really appreciate. And again, hats off to all the boots on the ground, the officers on the road who are out there. Again, we ask a lot of them pre-COVID, and now they're doing that same difficult job and doing it, with a bunch of extra PPE on and having to, have their own, personal safety concerns about COVID. And again, potentially bringing that home to their families. Along those lines, just the update on the officers who were out quarantined. The officer that we had put on quarantine, you remember he had the foot pursuit with the subject. He comes back tomorrow, good to go, never developed any symptoms, which is great. And then we have 2 other officers that are out because of a positive test result of an immediate family member in the household. So again, it's a very good numbers for us here when we go back to the start of this thing in March, that we still don't have an officer here who's had a positive test result, which is great. And again, we continue to be aggressive with the quarantines just to make sure we do everything we can to limit any risk of attrition here within the agency. So as of tomorrow, we'll be 2 officers on quarantine for probably about another 7 to 10 days. 7 for one, about 10 for the other. So since the beginning, you'll remember, it's at any given time we usually have about 1 or 2 officers out on quarantine. So we're still in great shape there. That is everything I have for an update. So we can go ahead and jump into questions and see. We'll see what we have this week. What is up, Glenn? See, I don't scroll fast enough. It starts erasing stuff on me. Germano, good to see you, my friend. Bunch of sheriff's cars on Old Main Shore Road. Yeah, we unfortunately we'll put out some information later on, but we had a suicide call today. So if you saw a lot of activity down on Old Main Shore, that's what that was about. Hey, Shannon. New gun permits. How do we pay for them? Hi, Stacy. We're going to put out some guidance on that in the lobby of the police station. We converted. There was an old drop box there that we used for the crossing guards. Used to drop off their time slips in there. We've repurposed that so people can drop off their checks for their firearms permits. When Sergeant Cassidy reaches out for you, when your permit's ready, he'll explain to you that procedure. You come in and drop that off, and then they'll send the permit out certified mail to you. So again, we continue to process a large number of those applications, but we keep churning them out as fast as we can do the backgrounds and get them printed and signed and get them off to you. So I feel like I'm probably signing feels like about 15 to 20 a week here for the last couple of weeks. So that's continuing. Lisa, will those funds be allocated somewhere else? That's up to the township. That's up to the CFO and the committee. Farmers market. We said farmers market's on June 18th down on Birdsall Street. Yeah, no fireworks is definitely a bummer. Serpico, good to see you, my friend. Hope you're doing well. Sorry, scrolling as fast as I can. Yep, you don't have to wear a mask, Stephen. It's not a law. It's not a requirement. It's just a recommendation. Hey, Jim, we talked about that last week. That's what the courts are there for. You can the executive orders are issued under a law that was passed by the legislature, the Disaster Act. So I'm sure that'll get looked at going forward. And the current controlling U.S. Supreme Court case is Jacobson v. Massachusetts. You can look that up. And until somebody overturns that, and that's been jurisprudence since 1905, that's why it's being done that way. And as for the Wisconsin decision, if you actually read that decision, that had nothing to do with saying it was unconstitutional. Wisconsin didn't follow their own law. That's why the Supreme Court in Wisconsin tossed that. That's a good question, Charlotte, about the DV complaints and how many of those are related to drug or alcohol. That info is on the DVRs, so that's something I can actually look at, and I'll look at that and have an answer for you next week. It's a good question. Jen, are we operating at 100% right now? I'll give you the, it's not a straight yes or no answer. We have a couple officers that are out on quarantine, like we talked about, but our squads are 100% staffed above minimum. So, every squad has a minimum personnel staffing, and then we're usually a couple over that, obviously, because everything that we try to do in the community, we like having more, but we have a minimum number that we have to work with, and at no point at this have we ever been anywhere near at risk of falling below those minimums. And if we look at overtime as an indication, I've talked about this the last couple of weeks. Our overtime expenditure, when you look back to the beginning of this and you look at, the month of April was the lowest overtime we've had in this police department in probably a decade. I think we had like 20 hours of overtime for the entire month, which is a very small number for a police department, especially this size. So yep, we are effectively at full staffing. Have we thought about a Citizens on Patrol program? So we have a lot of neighborhood watch programs that have been stood up over the years that have been very effective. And I know some of the communities out west have their own kind of version of that. So again, that's something that we're always interested in looking at, always interested in expanding. When we look at how we plan out our year here, as we come to the end of a year, we do a SWOT analysis. We develop a budget plan and a plan for what we want to accomplish, our goals and objectives for the next year. We had some really good community-based stuff that we were excited about rolling out this year. Some things that aren't being done other places, and COVID kind of pushed that back, like it's pushed a lot of things back in businesses and people's lives right now. So the hope is that as we get through this period, that we can start to put some of these new concepts and new programs and new initiatives that we have planned out on the drawing board, put them into practice. So more on that to come. Let's see. Jose, yeah, you can have barbecues. There's still the executive order with gatherings is still there, right? So we're still not supposed to have gatherings of more than 10 people. It seems like there's so much nuance in some of this stuff, right? If you want to go down, they open up the batting cages. So, if father wants to go down to the Water Street field and hit a ball with his daughter, with his son, they can do that. But if a coach wants to go down there, with the same kid, that connects it to an organizational activity, so that's not allowed. So again, it just I think some of the unintended consequences of some of these directives, but that's what we have to go on. Lawrence, I see your question about can we get an answer on Airbnb, and I will absolutely get you an answer on that. That's my bad, because I think you asked about that last week. So yes, we'll absolutely take a look at that. Jerry, concerts are canceled for the summer. I don't want to say they're canceled for the whole summer. They're canceled as of now until the executive order that puts that prohibition on concerts, festivals and events of that size. Until that gets lifted, we won't be able to have concerts down at the dock or anywhere else. Missy, not sure which spot you're talking about, but feel free to give us a call when you see him there, and we'll be happy to go over there and check it out. Barbara, the July flea market at the dock, it's a good question. I'm going to say I don't see why not. If we can have the farmers market, I would think we could have the flea market. That's actually a question we'll push up through state OEM and get an answer on that. It's a great question. Angela, always looking to help us out. Appreciate that. Nope. Like we keep talking about, everything the community's been doing to just kind of support social distancing, to stay at home, and really just get along. High stress times we'd expect in a time like this. We got a lot of people out of work. We got a lot of people worried about their health, their family's health, their businesses. So you'd expect some of the some conflict to flare up here and there in town, and we haven't seen that, which is really a testament to the type of community we have here. So a great question again. Mr. Ninehouse, good to see you. Thank you, sir. Marie, that's a great question. So not COVID related, do we have programs in place to deal with disabled adults? We do. We have programs in place to deal with people in mental health crisis. We have POAC come in to help give the officers training on dealing with autistic individuals. So those kinds of areas are someplace that we look at through not just those specific programs, but when we look at conflict resolution, the de-escalation training that we do. Our use of force rates are really low here, and they have been for a number of years. And I think that's a big part of that is because of the de-escalation training and really all the training that goes on here. The officers here really benefit from a high level of training. It's a great question. Street lights. Nick, just if you want to send me a message on here, or you want to jump on the township website and just grab my email off the homepage, just send me the address for the street light, and we'll get that taken care of. That's easy. You can call the power company directly. We have a list here that when the officers are working at night, if they see one that's out, they can throw it on the list. If somebody reports it, we can throw it on the list and report that to the power company too. So just punt that my way. We'll take care of that. Marty, good question. Fishing on the bay, non-household members, is it okay now that charter boats are able to operate? My belief is yes. My understanding is yes, but I'll double check it. When they talked about the original limits on fishing, the recommendation was that you only went out with members of your immediate household. But I'm not sure if that was ever codified in the executive order. I think that was more of a recommendation, but I'll double check on that. It's a good question. Is Shooters shooting range open? I don't know if Shooters is open, but I do know that one of those executive orders that we just talked about, I think it was 147, opened up shooting ranges again. So I would think they would be open. I would definitely jump on their website or take a look. But yeah, shooting ranges, archery, those are allowed to be open now. All right, Marie. Yep, I see the info about JCP&L and the light on Windward. We'll put that on the list and make sure it gets taken care of. All right, Barbara, is the Barnegat Beach area open? Yes, the beach is open. Again, same guidelines like we're seeing everybody else. It's we see the theme here, asking people to have to social distance when they're on the beach. Social distance from people who aren't in your household, aren't immediate family members that you're already around. And again, recommendations out there that if you're outside to wear a mask. It's going to make for some interesting tan lines, but that's the recommendation. Marie's telling us Shooters opens tomorrow. So again, good news there. You saw the governor talked about it. I want to say both last night and this morning, kind of hinting that we're going to be moving towards in the next couple of weeks, our restaurants possibly getting opened up here, which again, I know that's a big issue for everybody. We've got a lot of our own favorite local places around here that everybody's kind of, been supporting from a takeout perspective, but are, certainly interested in having the opportunity to go out and dine, even if it's sitting outside. So, again, we'll hope that's coming. Hope that's coming sooner than later. I'm going to do a quick scroll back, see if I'm missing any. Thank you, Stephen. Always good to see you. Is the Barnegat Lighthouse open? I think the lighthouse should be open. State parks are open, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the lighthouse itself is open. It's a good question. I would think social distancing would be a little challenging when you have to pass each other on those narrow stairs on the way up and down. So if I had to guess, I would think the lighthouse wouldn't be open, but I don't know. Good info, Renee. Thank you. All right, we'll give a second if anybody's got any last-minute questions before we jump off. We're right about at that same point we wrap up each week. Thanks, Brandy. Yep, lighthouse looks like it was closed, but the pier in the park is open. Good. All right, everybody. Another good night of questions. We'll post up some of that info that I talked about. We'll dig for some answers on that, and then we'll hopefully see everybody again next week. So everybody stay safe. Enjoy the weekend. Hopefully the weather stays good for the whole weekend, and we'll see everybody next week. Be safe. Thanks.